Hello, my name is Daniel Wiseman, and this is my pitch for Soulless Survivalist, a 2D physics-based survival game with some mechanics in common with games like Don't Starve and Terraria. The gameplay footage you are seeing is from a prototype I developed in GameMaker Studio to test some of the systems as well as the physics-based gameplay. In this game, you play as a maintenance droid whose ship has broken down in deep space while the pilot is in cryosleep. Similar titles include Don't Starve and Terraria. While Soulless Survivalist has similar mechanics and systems, it sets itself apart in some key ways. First, it has a physics-based game world, and also the player must manage the pilot's stats as well as their own. I believe these differences set it apart enough to make the game idea novel. In the main gameplay loop, the player must manage resources such as their own power and fuel, as well as maintaining the pilot's cryopod power and nutrients. The player will do this by gathering resources from mineable nodes in the game world and using them to craft items and resources to prolong their own survival, as well as the helpless pilots. The player will always lose power when outside of the ship, and their fuel will deplete while they are moving. If either the fuel or the power reaches zero, the game ends immediately and the player will be given a score based on their performance. On top of that, the player will also have to manage the pilot's cryopod power and nutrients level. If either of these gets too low, the pilot's health will fall. Once the pilot expires, the game once again will end and the player will receive a score based on their performance. The player's power will fall faster when they are mining and they're using their thrusters to move, while the pilot's power and nutrients will fall at a steady rate always. The player needs to mine and explore to find enough resources to support both the droid and the pilot, even though this will make their own stats fall faster. The droid can be refilled from anywhere in the game, but the player will need to return to the ship in order to add power and nutrients to the pilot, so situational awareness is required at all times. The other main challenge to the player is that asteroids will randomly generate in both random locations and moving random directions. These asteroids will damage both the player and the ship if they collide with either. If the player survives long enough, they will be able to construct temporary barriers to prevent collisions. The items that recharge the player's power are the same items that recharge the cryopod power, and the biomaterial that can be made into fuel for the player can also be broken down into nutrients for the pilot. The player must constantly be prioritizing whether to recharge their own power or if they can wait and recharge the pod's power instead. The same goes for the fuel and nutrients. With random material drops, if the player chooses to recharge themselves, they are not sure when they will have enough material to help the pilot, so every choice comes with its own downside. Some risks for this project include unbalancing issues. As with any game with a large amount of stats and systems to manage, it will always be a challenge to get them all to work right together. Also, randomly generated maps and items could prove challenging for amateur developers. I believe this game's simple art style and layout make it a very feasible game for a student team to complete, while the systems and mechanics are still intricate enough to provide a proper challenge for a final capstone project. Thank you very much for taking the time to review my pitch for Soulless Survivalist.